All right, boys, here we are, live from the weight pile. We're recorded, you heard. We're going to kick this thing off, man. Going to do this thing a little bit different than I have been. But, yeah. So, I've been watching this story about Jack Lucas, Medal of Honor winner from World War II back in the 40s. And I wanted to share the story with you because I thought the story was incredible, man. It's a crazy story, man. But a lot of these stories from World War II guys, man, start out, especially Medal of Honor winners back then, start out like kind of the same. Like basically, the guy was born in the Depression and grew up with next to nothing. So that being said, I'm gonna grab me a set. So that's how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna probably tell y'all a little bit. Grab me a set. You dig? Say a little bit. Grab a set. But yeah. When Jack was about 8, his uncle gave him a Marine dress hat, and he wore it to school for like 2 months straight. That pretty much set him on a course that he wanted to be a Marine. Well, when he turned about when he turned 11, his dad passed away from cancer. You can imagine that probably sent Jack on a way that you know he had a hard time dealing with that. Not to mention he was a big kid, man. He wasn't small by no means. I think he was about 10 or 11 there, and he started acting up, man. His mom didn't know what to do with him. His mom didn't know what to do with him. Let's see. Got declines after this. Mom would bring guys home, and old Jack would sit there and tell him that he was gonna beat them up. He's gonna whip them. He ended up being like 5'8", but apparently these guys it was a problem. Every time his mom would try to bring a guy home, he'd tell him that he's gonna whip him up. And his mom ends up telling him that he's gonna have to go to military school. She sends him off to military school, and he ends up seeing the attack on Pearl Harbor. He ends up seeing the attack on Pearl Harbor on TV with a lot of the other cadets. And them guys end up leaving, from the military school to go into the military. But he was too young, so after about a year, he goes back home, and his mom's done married his stepdad, done married a man. Of course, Jack goes to telling him how he don't like him. He's burning through all of his dad's money that they got from the insurance company. And basically tells old boy that he's gonna whip his ass. The only thing good was is old boy had 2 sons, and Jack took them in as brothers, like they was his blood brothers, and accepted them as family. Damn boy, we need to get a haircut badly. But the oldest son ended up going into the Navy. Jack was 14, and of course, you had to be he talked to a recruiter, and he said, well, how old are you? He said, I'm 16. He said, well, you got to be 17. Come back in a year and we can do some business. Well, Jack goes around and he gets him an application to fill out for his mom to sign to let him get in early. Release him so that at 17 he could start being a Marine. Well, back then the Marines started checking pretty tight, like the Army and the Navy and stuff didn't really check that tight back in the 40s. You know what I'm saying? A lot of guys got in underage. So basically he comes home and he talks to his mom. He says, that's one set, boys. And he's like, Mom, I want to go in to the Marines. He done already been to military school, but he wants to go in the Marines and go fight the world, go fight the Japanese. And she's like, well, that's fine, but you got to finish school up, and then I'll sign it. It says right here that you got to be 17. So he's like, dang, come on, Mom, sign the damn thing. What the hell? So he ends up and goes and forges it. And he asks his stepdad, he says, man, won't you take me on down here to the recruiting office so I can turn in this paperwork? So, of course, his stepdad's probably pretty much tired of his shit and always telling him he's going to beat him up and all kinds of weird stuff. You know what I mean? So he takes him on down there. He goes in there and the recruiter says, you got to have your birth certificate. Where's your birth certificate at? And he's like, what? Birth certificate? Well, son of a bitch. So he goes back out to the car where his stepdad's waiting for him. And he's like, what's going on here? What's wrong? I thought I was rid of you. You know, basically. So he turns on the charm and goes in there and talks to the Marine recruiter. And he says, hey, yeah, man, he's 17 for sure. 100% he's 17. His mom lost his birth certificate. Hell, probably never even had one for real. I think she had him at the house. And, back in the 40s, man, a lot of people didn't have their kids at the hospital. There was definitely families that just had their kids at the house. So the Marine recruiter's finally like, all right, hell with it. He signs them up, gets his papers all done. Jack goes out there, say goodbye to his stepdad, and old dude's already gone. He ain't even out there waiting for him to see what's going to happen. But Jack don't really care because he's got what he wanted. He wants to go fight the Japanese, and now he's a Marine, what he wanted to do since he was 8 years old, So they ship him off to boot camp. Now he's 14 years old, going out with a bunch of guys to the bars on the weekends when they get leave. And, he goes through training. And he ends up being pretty proficient with a machine gun. So the one thing he did say about boot camp, the only thing that he learned from boot camp was that one day they said, hey, who wants to drive a truck? So he was pretty excited, being 14. He hadn't drove too many vehicles, being back in the 40s and stuff, So he was excited. He was like, yeah, me. And the guy says, okay, come over here and grab this wheelbarrow and take ammunition up and down the line here all day, refilling for the range. And he said, that's when I learned never volunteer for anything in the Army, never, or in the Marines, never volunteer for anything. So old boy's getting ready, and he's pretty proficient with the machine gun, and they give him his orders and on a piece of paper that he's going to stay there and train other soldiers or other Marines how to shoot the machine gun, right? Well, that ain't what Jack wants to do. Jack wants to go out and he wants to fight the Japanese. So nobody's seen the orders yet. He kind of keeps it to himself, but he sees that everybody's loading up on the trains and going west to get set up for going out into the Pacific feature, right? They're gonna go fight the war in the Pacific against the Japanese. So, since he don't know, nobody knows what he's supposed to be doing, he jumps on the train, heads out to California, to Fort Elliott. Well, they're only there for a short time doing training and stuff, but they end up having the great idea to start going down to Tijuana. So you can only imagine 14-year-old boys running around with a bunch of guys. They're all telling stories and stuff about how they've been in conquest and all that, with women and everything. So he's sitting on the bunk one night, and he pulls down into his bag and pulls out a little 38 snub nose that was his mom's. He had brought over with him, and he starts twirling it around on his finger. Starts twirling it around on his finger. Well, sure enough, it was loaded, and he ended up sending around out the tent through a couple other tents. Well, thank goodness, nobody was injured. But on another occasion, he was out with his boys, and he had his hat on, called a piss cutter, and he was talking to a couple ladies out at the bar. Well, another Marine group showed up, and the biggest dude came over to pick on him because he's like the smallest dude, 5'8". He's still a pretty stocky dude, though. He's, boxer. An old dude comes over, wants to pick on Jack. So he takes Jack's, hat, and he turns it sideways, and he says, "Damn, boy, you look like Napoleon." Well, Jack didn't take kindly to that. He goes and knocks the dude out. Jack got in a little bit of trouble for that, being that they were supposed to be shipping out. They're trying to move everybody closer and closer to the Pacific Theater so that they could get men to fight the Japanese. Well, they get into a little bit of trouble over that deal, but he gets sent to Hawaii anyway. So him and his unit and everybody, they get out to Hawaii there. And that's 2 sets, boys. They get out to Hawaii there, and let's see, let me check my notes real quick. Oh yeah, so he gets his orders and he don't tell nobody. He sees everybody leaving on the trains for California to get to Elliott, right? And he ends up jumping on the train and going with everybody else. When he shows up to Elliott in California before they go to Hawaii, old boy's standing there naming everybody's names off. They get to the end of the line and says, "Whose name haven't I called?" You know what I'm saying? And Jack says, "Well, you ain't called my name." And he just acts like a dumb old private, and he's like, "Well, I was outside and they told me to get on the train, so I did. I don't think the Army tells me what to do." So the guy's like, "Yeah, that checks out." So he calls his commanding officer and is like, "Hey man, we got this dude. He's supposed to be across the other side of the country, and here he is." And he's like, "Well, he says he wants to fight. Let's send him out there. Do what you gotta do, put him with a unit." So that's what they did. That's when they started going down to Mexico, getting in that fight. But they made it out to Hawaii, man. Now he's in Hawaii, and everybody's kind of shipping out. Everybody's getting on their boats. Everybody's shipping out to the Pacific Theater to go fight the Japanese wherever they're stationed at, right? Well, old boy, he's standing in line, and they're calling out the names like boat number 5, boat 20, USS whatever. That's where you got to go. they call out Jack Lucas, and he says, yeah. He said, fall out to the colonel's office. He's like, oh, shit. So he don't know what the deal is, but he knows it ain't good, right? I don't know what we did, but we might be doing the same thing again. I think we are. I'm not even sure where we're at. I think I messed up big time. I gotta kick back the declines. So he goes into the colonel's office. And you see, Jack had been writing letters home. Well, he sent that shot through the tents, and nobody got hurt. And he figured I probably better mail that gun back. Well, after that, he knew he was shipping out. You know, everybody's sending letters home to their moms and stuff and family saying, hey, you know, love you, and we're going to war. You know what I'm saying? So you don't hear back from me, you know, type shit. And well, Jack had told somebody in the letter that he was 15. So now the colonel knows, and the Marines know that he's 15. So Jack, he starts writing up the papers and stuff to get him out of there. And Jack says, listen, bud, check it out, right? Maybe instead of that, I'll just go to the Army, and they won't even check. So he knows he's right. So he decides to keep him on the base, keep him around as the garbage man, driving the garbage truck. Well, you know, he's kicking it around Hawaii. He goes to go pick up some parts for a military vehicle or one of the garages, and he finds that they got a sports car up on the rack. He asks him about it, and he says, yeah, a millionaire guy had got it sent down here before everything happened at Pearl Harbor, and now it's just here. It's abandoned. I'll sell it to you for a couple $100. So he gets it. It just needs some tires and rims, which he acquires from the base, of course. That's third set, I think, boys. So now he's running around in this fancy sports car, and all the MPs and everybody figures that it's like a captain or a colonel's car, and they're Marines driving around on official business, you know what I mean? So nobody's pulling them over. Well, Jack ends up going out to a bar one night and getting into a fight, which he was known to do, of course, with one of the guys that was supposed to be like the pretty boy Marine that they put on all the posters and all the propaganda going back home and stuff. He was going to be like the face, you know, on all that stuff. He ends up getting into a fight with old Jack, and Jack beats him up pretty bad, messes the dude's face up a little bit. Well, they take and arrest old Jack for that one. 17 leaves. He got arrested 17 times. So I think we got one more to do, I think, right? I'm not marking nothing down or nothing, so it's kind of hard to say. But I think that was the third set that we just did. So they arrest him. For 45 days, he's out there waiting trial, and he's got to do hard labor. He's out there 45 days breaking rocks. He gets convicted and sentenced to 30 days of bread and water, which is an old punishment from the Navy. Back in 1909, they decided that he wasn't allowed to give anybody more than 7 days, but if you really upset somebody, what they would do is they'd give you, well, in 1909, they outlawed being able to give somebody 30 days. So you're saying to yourself, I thought you said this was in the 40s. Well, what they would do was, to get around it, they would give you bread and water 3 times a day for 7 days or 6 days. On the 7th day, they let you out your cell and they give you a full meal so that they couldn't say that they had you locked up for 7 days on the bread and water. You'd be right back on bread and water for 6 more days, right? Well, they gave him 30 days of that. He gets out. His boys still got the sports car and everything that's not getting pulled over, right? They get a good idea. They're going to go over to this boat that's in the harbor that's full of beer. And they're going to steal jerry cans full of beer, fill them up. Jerry cans, which are gas cans, full of beer, and bring beer back to the company so everybody can get drunk. Great idea, right? So that's what they do. They run over to the boat. They steal a bunch of beer. They bring it back to the company. The company gets drunk, having a good old time, celebrating. You dig? Getting ready to ship out and all, you know. Well, after a couple hours, all the beer's gone. So they're like, no problem. No worries, boys. We're going to slide back over there and fill the cans back up. So basically, they're going to return to the scene of the crime where they had just been, right? They pull up, the place is full of MPs. They chase them down. The 2 guys that were with them get away. They jump out and run, but unfortunately, Jack was in the middle, so they catch him. Take him to court, convict him, sends him to another 30 days of bread and water. So Jack does the other 30 days of bread and water. He gets out, and he notices that in the harbor, there's 100 boats out there. Guys coming back, resupplying, refueling, all that, right? And they got these little boats going back and forth from the big boats to the mainland, back to the big boats, right? Carrying people back and forth, all that good stuff. So he figures, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to go find my cousin. He's got to be out there. He's in the Navy, Sam Lucas, and I'm going to go find him. So he jumps on one of them little boats, takes a ride out, and sure enough, he ends up finding the boat that Sam Lucas is on. He starts asking around, anybody know Sam Lucas? Anybody know him? And sure enough, the guy's like, yeah, I know him. He's in the infirmary right now. He done got busted in the head with a beer bottle out at the bar. Sounds like it might run in the family, huh? Well, Frank goes to the infirmary, talks to his cousin. They're all hanging out, having a good old time. The sun's going down. He misses the last boat back. And they're like, oh, hell, don't worry about it. You can sleep on the deck with us. He ain't have no bed there, of course. He ain't supposed to be there. He ain't got no bunk. Don't worry about it. We sleep on the deck anyway, instead of down in the dungeon, so that it's not as hot. So he stays on the boat. He's kicking it with them for a while. Day 28 rolls around, and his cousin's like, hey, man, are you really about this? Because, 30 days, that's when they're going to send pictures to all the police departments in the United States looking for you, bud. All your family members going to get pulled up on by the cops looking for you, by the MPs and everybody looking for you, because you're going to be AWOL, not just AWOL like out of place, but like AWOL like they're coming for you. So old Jack's like, all right. He goes up to the captain of the boat. He tells the captain, hey, look, this is what happened. The captain's like, oh my God, why did you do this on my boat? Why would you bring this trouble to me, make me have to do all this extra work, paperwork, figuring, not to mention, I got a stowaway and I'm about to leave in like 2 days for Iwo Jima. So they call up their commanding officer. This is the second time that he's went AWOL to basically go fight the Japanese, right? Probably the only soldier to ever do it. So that's it, boys, on that. we're going to get to doing burpees and calf raises right here directly, so we're going to have to set up for that. So they talked to the commanding officer. The commanding officer says, shit, I don't care, it's whatever. Let's get him out of here. So he says, just find somewhere to put him, you know. He says, well, why don't you station me here with the Marines? My cousin's here on this boat. I'd like to just stay here. And he says, yeah, sure, whatever. Just get out of here. So they stationed him with the Marines there, and I guess the guy that was looking out for him either made him the trash truck driver. The colonel that was looking out for him wanted to keep him there and protect him. Probably didn't even know it happened, or if he did, he didn't want to take responsibility for having an underage kid. You know what I mean? So finally, he's on his way to Iwo Jima to fight the Japanese. Finally, he's finally going to get a chance to do what he's been wanting to do this whole time, his whole life since 11 years old, right? 4 or 5 years ago, anyway. And Jack takes off, and they head on over to Iwo Jima. Hold on, y'all, one second. So America wanted Iwo Jima so they could set up some air bases there to try to attack the mainland. Oh man, I messed up. To attack the mainland of Japan, right? And Japanese wanted Iwo Jima's island. It's only like 8 miles island, right? They wanted the island so that they could set up a radio array and know that we was coming, you know, long before we even made it. They know the bombers were on the way long before we even made it there, you know. So they had like something like 2,000 some odd troops embedded, pillboxes, all that. You know what I'm saying? Tunnels, entrenched. You know what I'm saying? The Japanese were there and they weren't going nowhere. In like ticks. Well, for months, the United States have been dropping bombs on that island, shooting artillery from ships, you know, just decimating the island. But most of the Japanese survived in these tunnels and underground bunkers. Well, so the boats pull up, and the Marines get into the Luller boats and start heading in the personnel carriers and start heading up to the beaches. Now they're going to assault this thing a couple different ways. One assault team is going to hit the mountain, and one try to take the mountain, and one is going to take the airfield. And Jack's going to take the airfield. So the first boats show up. They start moving in. There's no fire coming, like, you know, the Japanese aren't shooting at them or anything. They're thinking like, this is kind of weird. So they pull up onto the beach, and that's when the Japanese attack. Pretty much kind of ambushing them, having boats running into other boats, personnel carriers running into personnel carriers, guys in the water making it onto the beach, getting pinned down in craters from the other bombs that had been dropped months ago. It's a debacle, right? Now the new boats that are coming in can't get in because the first wave of boats are in the way. Well, Jack's on that second wave, and they're coming in. Well, the boat driver freaks out and drops the front of the boat before they get close enough where they really can, you know, where it's shallow. So they jump out. It's about 6-footer deep water, and it's supposed to be like 4-foot water. So a lot of guys are up to their chest in water. Well, Jack's kind of shorter, so he's up to his chin. He's trying to like keep his head back so he can breathe. Well, they hit the beach, and they're running full gear, and they hit a crater, and they're pinned down by machine gun fire. Well, for about 2 hours, they sit there, not knowing what to do. And finally, Jack just figures, if I can still hear the explosions going off, then I ain't dead yet. Let's get up and let's get it. So him and his fire team jump up, and they start advancing towards the front line. Jack gets all the way up to the front lines where he's been waiting to be to fight the Japanese this whole time, and immediately he's sent back to the beach to grab a machine gun with another soldier. Another Marine. I know Marines aren't soldiers, so. Well, they get back and the beach is covered with volcanic sand. And they had to pull, it's got like two handles, one on each side for them to pull it. And he said every time he took a step forward, it felt like the sand swished them back 2 steps. So they make it all the way back to the front line with this machine gun, and they're pretty much smoked. They don't have no energy left. But they got to continue on. They start moving up, and they end up taking the Japanese retreat back a little bit, and they end up into the tunnels, and they end up taking the foxholes and the trenches the Japanese had dug. Well, they're in the tunnels. They call in a tank with a flamethrower on it to come and get them boys out of the tunnel, right? Well, the Japanese see the tank coming, and they're like, oh, hell no. So they start running out of the tunnel because they don't want to be fried. And old boy Jack starts to letting go at them, right? Starts sending them the good news, right? Well, his Pez dispenser ends up jamming up on him. So he jumps down behind the wall, right? And he's trying to unjam it. And he looks over and he sees 2 Japanese grenades. Now, he doesn't know, was they here before when we came in? Or were they thrown in during this firefight while we're not paying attention and everything's going on around us? Then he's thinking, I only got a split second here, like 4 seconds for that thing goes off. Do I have time to tell everybody else and get them to move before this thing goes off? And he's thinking. So Jack goes, 17 years old. He's going to die in this trench. So Jack goes, grabs the 2 grenades. He turns his back to the men that are in the trench, and he yells, grenade. And about that time, the grenade explodes, sending shrapnel. Anything from the size of a pea to the size of a .22 caliber into his body, numerous places. His whole body's covered with blood. His arms mangled. It flipped him 180 degrees, and he landed on his back. The Marines start moving up and stepping over top of him, thinking that he's no longer with us, deceased. That's when another fire team of Marines fall into the trench that he's laying outside of, and they have a Marine Corps engineer, which is a doc, The doctor goes over and starts checking him out, and he sees that he's clutching a grenade. The doctor doesn't know. He doesn't know what the case is, so he just grabs the grenade and throws it into a trench that's clear, pretty close to where they're at. He thinks nobody's in it. Well, 2 Japanese soldiers jump up out of that trench and start engaging the doctor medic that's taking care of Jack Lucas. Well, that guy's a badass Marine, and he takes both them dudes down. And he goes back to working on Jack. Jack loses consciousness a couple times, but basically the doctor does the best he can, patching him up, and he sends him with a couple other Marines to take him back, drag him back to the beach and get him out of here. And they're dragging him back across that same volcanic ash. That he was having such a hard time struggling to get machine gun back to the front line, They get him loaded up and he passes out and he wakes up in the hospital and the doctor tells him that the only reason he's alive is because that ash acted like a super coagulant and stopped him from bleeding out. Well, old Jack's arm, he gets a real bad infection. Last thing he remembers is talking to the doctor and the doctor being like, we're going to have to take your arm, but this infection gets any worse. So he says, Doc, please don't take my arm. Do whatever you can. And reluctantly, the doctor agrees, He says, yeah, I'll try to do whatever I can, man, to try to save your arm. He wakes up and they're getting ready to transport him back to the States. And the doctor tells him, like, hey, man, we had to put maggots inside your cast. They should eat up all the infection and just leave the good tissue there. So he's got this cast on. He gets back. It's been a long time since he's had it on. They go to take it off, man, and it's all like pus and green. And they said it was the worst smelling thing they had ever smelled. It ran all the other guys that was in the medical bay out of there. They said the one guy was missing a leg and he had to crawl out of there. It smelled so bad. And Jack said he didn't blame him because it's the worst thing he'd ever smelled in his life. Well, he went through several surgeries and then he got a call while he was still in the hospital telling him that he had to go to D.C. to receive his Medal of Honor. President Truman met him there on TV to give him his Medal of Honor, and he came over to shake his hand. He grabbed his shoulder tightly and stuck his thumb right into one of his open wounds. And Jack's on TV trying to just stand there and be as stern-faced as he can be. Act like nothing's going on, Well, Truman talks to him and says, son, I'd rather have this medal than to be president. And Jack laughs. He said, well, I'll trade you. Jack goes back home, buys himself a brand new Chevrolet, moves back in. He says, Mom always said that when I got back, I'd go back to school for her. So he enrolls back into high school, fresh out of the war, brand new truck, brand new Chevrolet. Probably the coolest kid in school, probably. You know what I'm saying? Well, he gets into class and he sits down and he looks around. He's like, what the hell is that noise, man? And he sees none of the other kids are looking around or anything. And he realizes that his ears are ringing so bad he can't even pay attention. After shooting and all the explosions and everything around him, no ear protection, he had where he couldn't even hear. He goes to the VA and the VA hooks him up with hearing aids. And he goes back to school. He ends up going to college and getting a business license, or a business degree, my bad. Gets a business degree and he opens up a little shop. Trying to think exactly how this all goes down, man. Make sure I don't mess it up. He gets married. He's working. He's with his family for about, I don't know, until he was 40. When he turned 40, he was like, man, this is bullshit. feel like I'm wasting my life. I need to conquer my fears. My last fear is heights. So how's the best way to conquer that? Probably be to join the army and start jumping out of planes, right? So that's what he does. He goes and joins the 101st, starts jumping out of planes, right? So he's in training. He goes up. He's supposed to jump. Basically, it's just like a tether jump or whatever, you know. So you go up to the door of the plane. You fall out. You just wait. You feel a jerk from the parachute opening, and then you just, glide down to the ground. No big deal. So, dude jumps out of the plane. He's gliding through the air, waiting for the jerk, you know what I'm saying, of the parachute. Never comes. So he looks up. Sure enough, his chute's not open. His chute's not open. It's not expanding. Whatever. It's not unfolding to catch the air. He does what he can. He cuts it loose like his training's told him, and he pulls his reserve chute. Only problem is the reserve chute does the same thing. The reserve chute does the same thing. It gets tangled. It's not opening. He's falling to the ground. He's passing other guys that are in parachutes that have opened. And he's figuring like, man, I'm going to have to revert back to my training. I'm going to land on my feet, turn and roll. So basically, you land on your feet. You bend your knees, and then you roll out. So that's what he does. He hits the ground, he bends his knees, and he rolls out, gets up, and walks it off like nobody's business. Nothing happened to him. Jumped out of a plane, parachute didn't open, hits the ground feet first, walks away like nothing happened. And when I tell you, he walks away like nothing happened, brother, when I tell you that, and you're thinking, yeah, he probably like sprained an ankle or something, he jumped again 2 weeks later. Yeah. And he said he wasn't scared a bit. Ain't that something, dude? He done got blowed up with a grenade, fell out of the damn plane, never opened the parachute. You know what I'm saying? Crazy, dude. He had like, I don't know, 400 and some jumps after that. And then he found out they were not going to send him to Vietnam because he had a Medal of Honor. And he got out of the military. He ended up divorcing his first wife and marrying his second wife that had 2 sons that brought into the family. And he ended up opening up a butcher shop. Things are going pretty good, He's got a lot of money. He's got boats. He's got a monkey that wears a dress. All kinds of stuff, man. Like, that just, some rich people type shit. Well, one day he gets a call from the IRS. And the IRS asking him a lot of questions. Start explaining to him that I guess his wife was taking care of all the books, and she just decided that she wasn't going to pay anymore, and that she was going to take a little extra funds for, working late and stuff like that. Well, Jack separates her from the business end of it and starts making everything square with the government. And one night he's eating dinner and he gets a call from the Baltimore police, and they're like, "Hey, we got a problem with your product down here. You're going to have to come in and talk to us." So he's thinking, oh, God, somebody's done got food poisoning or something from one of the products in the butcher shop. I'm going to have to go down here and answer for it, right? Everything's going terrible, right? Basically, everything's just going terrible for the guy, right? He gets down to the police department, and they're like, yeah, no worries, brother. Nothing's wrong with your business. Nobody's gotten food poisoning or nothing like that. We just had to tell you that so we could get you down here without anybody else knowing why we wanted to get you down here. And proceed to tell him that his wife has been working to try to get, I think we're going to have to set up over here maybe. See how that works. See how this works right here. Just a little bit. I think I might be able to work with that. I gotta go get I'm not gonna do body squats. I'm gonna go get my thing and actually do some squats, man. I think this will work if I can get it set up just right. So the police get him in there and tell him, hey, look, man, your wife solicited another person that works for you at the butcher shop. She wants to get you out the way. Well, she had went and solicited somebody in the butcher shop. Another butcher, I reckon. I would have to assume and get a pretty good look at a T-bone by sticking my head up a butcher's, but I'd rather take the bull's word for it. Anyhow. Oh, man. So the guy, she comes to him, says, hey, how would you like me to get me and you get a little bit of cash together to you, of course. You know, she's telling dude, I'm going to pay you basically to get him out the way. So he immediately goes to the police and tells them, old girl's trying to get me to get dude out the way. So they bring him in. They tell him, hey, what we'd like to do is have you set up to get everything done, act like you don't know nothing, and then we'll move in and we'll take care of this business, right? So basically, the butcher tells, yeah, I got a buddy that's going to help me, the cop, and then we're going to have dude come over. We're going to give him a beer because she had like 3 or 4 people involved in this, right? A couple of his friends, I guess. Friends. Anyhow. He shows up to the card game like he's supposed to. They hand him a beer. He knows it's tainted. It's got some kind of sedative in it. He takes a sip, acts like he takes a drink out of it, excuses himself to the bathroom where he's got a beer hidden. He comes back out with the beer, goes on drinking like no problem, right? Then, as the night goes on, he starts acting like he's getting real sleepy. He starts acting and pretending like he's out. They take him and put him in the car. This is where it might get a little bit tough breathing and talking. They take and put him in the car and start heading over to the farm where they're supposed to dispose of him. Well, the cop on the way over lights up a cigarette, and old boy's driving, says, hey man, don't smoke in here. Jack wouldn't like that. And Jack's like in the back thinking, bro, you're taking me to end me and you're acting like I care if the dude's going to smoke in my car on the way? So he's supposed to be out. Jack starts chuckling to himself a little bit. Well, his belly starts jumping. And the cop reaches back and smacks him on the belly and says, yeah, this is his last ride or something like that, you know. And old boy laughs and Jack acts like he's out, you know. Well, they get to the farmhouse and Jack's wife's not there. She was supposed to be there to provide the weapon. Well, she's down the road. They just got to go get her, right? Go pick her up. So they run down to the store there and they meet up with his wife. And she's got the jammy jam, you heard? She's got the peanut butter, jelly, and all that, you dig? And a bag of chips. Well, they're on their way back and they end up getting back to the farm. The police are already there. They got all the dudes in custody already. They pull her out the car and arrest her. They find the peanut butter jelly and the bag of chips. You heard? Well, that kind of pretty much indicts her into the deal, you know what I mean? Now, he's got all kinds of guns and stuff, man. You know, Jack does, that she could have went and picked from to, you know, have them done away with. What does she do? She ends up picking that .38 pistol that it was his mom's that he was twirling his finger back in boot camp and sent a shot through the damn tents. Is that crazy or not? That's the one she picks to take him out with. How crazy is that, man? Well, of course, everybody's arrested. They got to go to court. He ends up testifying on his wife's behalf, stating that he didn't want to see his wife, mother of his children, going to prison. So the judge ended up giving her leniency and only having her do 10 years of probation. So Jack decides he's going to move to North Carolina onto a piece of property that he had with a Kelly, one of her sons that, is pretty much like his son. And they're staying out there. Before he can even get the water cut on, the neighbor comes over while they're sleeping in the mobile home. He's got a mobile home in an outbuilding on this piece of property. Catches the mobile home on fire because he doesn't want any neighbors while he's in there. So he wakes up to smoke and fire in his mobile home. He gets Kelly up and gets him out of there. Now, he's done lost everything. His guns, all of his personal belongings in the fire, everything. The only thing that he ends up being able to get back out of it is the star from his Medal of Honor. Of course, the ribbon was burned up, but so of course this goes on the news. Medal of Honor winner, house burned down in the middle of the night. So one of his buddies, his friends, calls him up, says, "Hey, I'm up here in Maryland. Why don't you come on up here and hang out with me if you ain't doing nothing else?" So he says, "Sure." So him and Kelly, his son, go up there, and start staying on the land. Start building a farmhouse. They had been there 10 days when the cops roll up and arrest Jack and Kelly. Apparently they had found a patch of smoke, a patch of greenery, a medicinal patch, if you will. Now, these plants were fully matured, and of course, Jack had only been there 10 days. So when they go to court, they end up figuring out that, well, they've only been here for 2 weeks, and these plants are pretty much ready to go. So there's no possible way that they could have had a hand in it, right? But, of course, the newspaper and the news and everything had already ran a story of Medal of Honor winner caught growing, cultivating, loving, you know what I'm saying? But anyhow, he ends up going back and staying in the outbuilding that's in North Carolina, right? They start taking and garnishing everything, pretty much taking all of his money, benefits, everything that he was getting from the government from being a veteran and a Medal of Honor winner, right? Which is crazy. Well, the news ends up picking up on that, putting pressure, and ended up making it right and making it to where benefits can't be taken from them, anymore. So that was a good thing. And then he ends up getting a call from another buddy of his out in Mississippi. And it's like, "Yeah, why don't you come out here and stay in Mississippi with me?" So he ends up going out there to Mississippi, and he meets a woman out there. He ends up getting married to her, his third wife. And finally, late in his life, he ended up having a chance to just settle down and live happily ever after. Now, that's such a crazy story, man. I know I did the one on John Chapman, and I know from time to time I like to tell you how I like to listen to the military stories, but that man right there just went through so much adversity in his life, bro. And just to keep on moving and to have a good attitude is mind blowing, for real. But I feel like it was a good story. It needed to be told, and I'm sure some of my viewers probably have never heard the story. I gotta thank the Fat Electrician and his channel, because that's pretty much where I got the story from. He did a great job of telling it. And shoot, what else can be said? What else can be said? Almost patched in perfectly. I got one more set of squat lunges, and then I'm gonna run on the elliptical machine for 30 minutes. Y'all know what time it is out here. No days off. Tell your loved ones you love them. I appreciate each and every one of y'all that watch the videos, that watch the shorts, that watch the lives. I gotta thank all my members. Anybody that sent me a super chat, anybody that's thought about me, just in general, throughout the day, and been like, man, I want to watch some that he made. Anybody that I've influenced to do anything I've been told by people that, I've influenced them to do certain things, this, that, or the third, or me and somebody else might have influenced somebody to do something even, you know what I mean? And that blows my mind. So I just like to thank my community for being here for me before I get out of here. Be nice to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself like I am all the time. I think that's all I got for you. Bicycle.